Alright, we're live on YouTube. And we have reached 100 people. Amazing. Probably the biggest crowd I've ever live streamed in front of. So, I don't know. A little bit of pressure, but should be fine. Alright, so if you weren't at the first live stream, basically the idea here is that we're taking this terrible game that I made when I was near the beginning of high school, and we are porting it over to the new game engine that we're using for Engine Simulator. So before we get started, we'll just take a look at where we left off last time. And when I say last time, I mean like, I don't know, 4 hours ago. Alright, so we got an ant, and we have the famous big white rock right here. And that's pretty much all we got. The thing is that we got a little bit sidetracked a few times, so we didn't really get that much done. I do have a timer here which says exactly how much time has elapsed of actually working on the project. We're at about 800 lines of code. Most of that is probably for shaders and stuff, but we're at 800 lines of code, and we've been working on this for about an hour and a half. So yeah, not hugely impressive. The original Engine Sim or the new one? This is for the new one. And can you have the YouTube link? Sure. Let me post this here. All right, there you go. Yeah, this is being recorded, and it is going on my second channel on YouTube. Alright, and there is one thing actually that I wanted to fix, which is I want my timer to actually capture when we're testing, because otherwise the timer is just going to be too low. So we can edit that here, and this is what I want to change. So the application is called... What is the application called? It's probably just called Ant World. So antworld.exe, more than likely. Alright, now theoretically, it should start capturing... Alright, there we go. Maybe. Alright, I think it's working. It appears to be working. Alright, so the last time, or in the last live stream, what we wanted to work on this time, and we're actually going to try to do some work this time, okay? I think we got sidetracked way too much in the last live stream, so this time we're going to actually try to do some work. The most important thing, or the most important mechanic in the game, is being able to pick up leaves, or just pick up things in general. So that's the next thing that we're going to implement. Alright, now if we consult the original game code, which we're trying to port here, which is a complete disaster, by the way. I made a pretty scathing review in the last live stream. So how did I actually implement these leaves? I would assume that I had some sort of class. Okay, no, this is a leaf car, which is apparently not the same as an actual leaf. Alright, I think it's here. For some reason I called it leaf utils. I don't know why this is a leaf utility, it's literally just a leaf, so... Alright, so here are all the different leaves, and I guess the idea is that they all have different nutritional values, which I guess makes sense. And I guess every leaf is just like a basic game entity, so there's nothing really that complicated about it. Alright, so what do we have to pay attention to here? Stolen? Okay. Yeah, so I guess that's how the crime is handled. So I guess if you take a leaf that's not yours, I think that leaf is considered stolen. And I guess that's what causes your wanted level to go up. the YouTube stream is set as unlisted. Yeah, that's intentional. I'm not streaming publicly on YouTube, mainly because I can't read the chat on YouTube. It's just, I need like a third monitor or something for that. Also, I mean, this is already like the biggest stream that I've ever streamed, or the biggest audience I've ever streamed to. So, and my second channel has like almost 5,000 subscribers. So yeah, we're just gonna keep it at this size for now. Alright, so how does this work here? Okay, so the leaves scale when they spawn in, that's pretty easy to do. Alright, this all seems pretty straightforward, so let's start implementing this. I really wish I had a third monitor, because then I could just look at the code without having to cover my Discord, but that's fine. Alright, so I have this utility script here, which basically I can use to make things. Actually, I'll just call this leaf. Alright, there we go. Yeah, 4 monitors would also be great. That should probably be my next upgrade. Everyone says that I should get a new CPU or a new GPU. I honestly think monitor is probably more important right now. Alright, so we should have a new file now for our leaves, and we can start this extremely complicated implementation. They're going to be more or less the same as rocks. I mean, they're just kind of like static art. If I could spell, that would be great. And we'll just get this. Alright, so that's our leaf class. Now we have a few different ones, and they all have different art, and I'm assuming that... Okay, so that is just input parameter. So we can do that. Let's see. Alright, so how many do we actually have? We have... I wonder if it's... I don't even think that it's necessary to have all of these as a separate class. It just seems like kind of a waste of effort. I'm not really sure why I did it this way, because there's like almost no difference between them. There's just like a difference in name. So I don't think I'm gonna do it that way again. Although, yeah. Alright, so yeah, I'm just gonna implement it as a single leaf class, and then, I mean, this is basically just identical to the rock code. I don't even know why I'm narrating this. This is like just the most basic stuff ever. Okay. Now, I guess technically speaking, I don't need to do it this way. Alright, let the hacks begin. I think we're just gonna... we're trying to do this in a short amount of time, so I'm not necessarily caring too much about how good this implementation is. Basically, we just want a leaf for all of the different variations. Maybe I'll put all the variations in like an enumeration or something. Alright, and we have the following types here. We have the fictitious Gagunda leaf. I don't know what that is or where I got the name from it, but if you missed the first live stream, those are basically drugs. For some reason I thought that was a good idea to implement in this game, but I don't know. I don't really know how to explain it. Alright, we got taro leaf. We have a brown leaf. and a beet leaf, apparently. Alright, there we go. So those are all the different leaf types, and I guess they all have different nutritional values. Alright. Okay. And for some reason I made this into an integer value. I'm not sure why there's so much Morse code going on in the chat. Do we just have a bunch of Morse code operators or something? Alright, so we don't need this. And we just need to... Alright, there we go. Alright, now... I'm trying to think, should I waste the effort and do a proper random number generator, or I feel like it just doesn't matter. We're gonna do this the degenerate way. I already know how to do this. Like if I was trying to write this properly, I would probably use like the C++ random number generator. I just don't really care enough, to be honest. We're just gonna use rand, tried and true. Alright, so I guess we also need the limits for all of the different types as well. Alright. I'm trying to remember, can you do this here or... Alright, we'll just do this over here. Alright, so essentially what I'm doing here is that the different leaves have different nutritional values, and they're randomly generated when the leaves are spawned. And this does depend on what kind of leaf it is. So the way that I did it in the actual game is not great. So I'm cleaning it up a little bit, but it's more or less the same as it was before. I'm trying to do this in like as low effort of a way as possible. Alright, there we go. And now, in order to generate, we're just going to use rand over here. So right, and I think that should be it. I should really write a function for this, but I don't think it really matters. Alright, there we go. So theoretically, this should generate a random number between these two values. So that should be fine. I guess I could also... Let me think, would that make sense? I could also do this as well. Alright, so that should be everything. And I guess we also need a default type. I don't know, I'll just make them default to like the red leaf variation. I guess also, I don't necessarily... Okay, we'll figure that out later. We don't have to do that now, because that's kind of a waste of time. And the last thing is that we have to have a list of the assets as well. Alright, and just do this. How has the chat already become chaos? It's literally been 10 minutes. We have to... Everyone, this is a live stream about making an ant game, okay? It's not worth losing your mind over. Alright, we still got people writing binary. Yeah, I'm kind of hoping that we go back to having 30 people in here like the last one, because that was at least, like, somewhat manageable. If this game gets to a playable state after the marathon, do you plan to release it to Patreon? Yeah, probably. It's gonna be terrible, but, you know, it'll at least be, like, somewhat playable, and it's a good test of the game engine, which is kind of the whole point of this exercise. Alright, so now we just have to... Is this an ant simulation game? I wouldn't say that it's a simulation game. It's... I don't know what I would call it, to be honest. It's more of a, yeah, I don't know. It's just a game. It's kind of like GTA, but ant-themed, I guess. That's like the best way that I can think of it. Alright, now we need to port over the Leaf assets. Alright, so... I don't know why I have so many copies of these. So we have the drug leaf, we have these... And yeah, I am using the original assets from the game, just because, well, to be honest, I don't really feel like making more assets, but also I want this to be more or less just a straightforward port. If we start getting into game design and like actually trying to make this good, that's going to be a very deep rabbit hole, which I would rather not explore right now. All right, and there we go. So these are all of our leaves. And now we can just reference them here with the asset loader. The temptation to make this code not ugly is powerful, but I'm going for speed here, okay? We're not necessarily going for the cleanest implementation ever. We're just going for speed. Alright, and... guess we're not going to do this in any particular order. And we have the red one. Alright, there we go. Does your engine have a glob file finder? Not really. I usually don't like systems like that, although I do see how it could potentially be valuable. Part of the reason for that is because for most of my projects, I actually don't have a lot of assets. Like for Steam Engine Simulator, for example, there's basically just a single file that contains all the models. And that's pretty much it. There are no textures or anything like that. If you're dealing with like a much bigger production, then I think it makes sense to have something that like automatically finds the files and stuff. But for most of my projects, it's not really that important. It'd be pretty easy to implement though. Alright, and we just do this. Alright, so that should be all of the leaf variations. So that should be fine. And then the final thing to do is I have to set the image here. Alright, there we go. Okay, so that should be pretty much it as far as the leaf is concerned. I guess I should also add something to get the value for later, because we're going to have to actually eat these. I really need to get a new keyboard. I don't know if it's obvious, but every time I try to do like Control-C or Control-V, I end up pressing the wrong buttons because my control button is really broken. We'll fix that later. Just pretend like we didn't see that. Alright, so that's pretty much our entire leaf implementation. Now, there is kind of a system for spawning in leaves, but I don't know exactly how I'm gonna do that. Probably just nothing too complicated. And we also need some code to generate a random leaf type. That might be useful. I don't know why there's so many Yandere dev. How do you even know what his keyboard looks like? Is this confirmed information, or? Alright, and... joke that you paste too much code? Well, I guess, I don't know. Maybe I'll just type it out manually. Maybe that'll be better. Alright, and this here. Alright, that should be pretty much it. So now we can actually try to spawn some of these in. Actually, I guess we have to also load these. But yeah, I mean, definitely for a game like this, I can see the value of having something that will just search through, and like, because yeah, this is kind of annoying. But for Engine Simulator, this is not going to be an issue because we actually have basically no textures at all. But it could be something interesting to look into. Alright, the green, and then this one. Alright, there we go. So that should be pretty much all of the leaf variations. Should be loaded now. And then we can just try spawning some in here. And I'm gonna just change the position so that we don't like, I just want to see it separated from the rock a little bit. Alright, there we go. Let's see what happens. Okay, somehow we've spawned another ant. I believe that's because I did not set the type, so that could be a useful thing to do. Alright, there we go. I guess that probably could be static, but... Alright, so there we go. We have a leaf. Now, there does appear to be a problem, which is that... I think the issue... what is that? I think maybe if I change the sampler to be clamp instead of... Because I think these textures are just really trash. And they're kind of like bleeding into the other side. Because it's wrapping, or yeah, it's just wrapping over. So that's one problem. The other problem is that the color is not right. And I think that that's because these images are probably not... Either the images themselves are not sRGB, or I'm reading them into sRGB incorrectly because they're a bit too dark right now. So that could be also something to look into. Can you make the ant turn 45 degrees? I could, but the thing is, in the original game, it doesn't actually do that. And it's pretty easy, but I'm concerned that if we start making modifications to the original game, it's just going to get way too complicated. That's my only concern. But yeah, in the original game, it's only, it's limited to 90 degrees. Alright, so we can fix this issue here. I guess, let me think. I'm trying to think of what's the most efficient way of doing this. Alright, let's go over to... our rendering assets here. Alright, so yeah, I have this set to repeat. Technically, I think defaulting to repeat is probably better, but I think clamp will fix the problem that we're seeing with some of the textures. Usually they would be avoided, but it's just these are so old and bad. Alright, so that fixed that issue. Not too surprising. Now we just have to correct for the color, which I think I'm just going to do later because it's not that important right now. Alright, so there we go. Now we have the leaf. Let's see if we can try to spawn in a few different leaves. Will we have realistic ant noises? No. Definitely not. I mean, if you were here in the first live stream, you've heard what the cars sound like in this game, and, yeah. Alright, so if I go over back to where I was before, please record that sound on stream. It's in the first one. It's in the recording. It's pretty hilarious. The new iteration? Oh, I guess so. Just use Adobe RGB. What does that have to do with anything? Alright, let's just spawn in some leaves here. Delete the cylinder. I mean, you can't even see it. Alright. Here, is this gonna make you happy? There you go, it's deleted. Okay, so... Just gonna do some like really trashy random numbers here. Alright, so now we have some leaves. Honestly, like, visually, it's not even that bad. Now, there is kind of an issue where the leaves are appearing on the wrong layer. They should technically appear under the ant, so that is something that we have to fix. And I'm trying to think, so the rock... I guess the rock would have to be on the lowest layer, and then we'll just put the leaves on top of that. I think that kind of makes sense. Why did you make a ghost pineapple? I don't know. I guess it kind of looks like that. Alright, so let's fix the layer issue here, which should be fairly easy. Now, technically, the best thing to do would be to have some sort of like standardized way of doing this. We're just gonna go full magic number on this because we got time limitations here. Now, if I go to the game entity, I guess I can just add a function here to set the layer. Alright, there we go, and now... Alright, so we're just going to choose some like arbitrary values here. I'm going to go with layer 20 for the leaves. And then for the player... So the player is supposed to be over them, so... Layer 30 for the player. And then for our rock entity, which I think is under landscape somewhere... Alright, we'll just set this layer to... I don't know, we could just go with layer 0. I don't think there's anything... Well, actually, is that a good idea? I think actually the anthills might be under the rocks. We'll just go with layer 5 for now. We can always adjust this later. Yeah, magic numbers are very fun. I like how I made a terrible project when I was 14, and now I have to deal with the terrible code, and now I'm just making another terrible project with the same level of terrible code. It's like I haven't learned anything. But anyway, so this is fixed now. Everything is appearing on the correct layer, and all is well, so that's good. Alright, so the next step is we have to be able to pick up objects. The animation is exceptional, of course. It's absolutely exceptional. Alright, now the picking up mechanic is fairly simple. The idea is that you just walk up to something, you press space, and then you pick it up. Now, the only thing that slightly complicates it is that we will have to do a search through the world for the closest thing. Do you think it'd be better to actually lock movement to cardinal directions and remove diagonal movement? I don't think so. It would, camera needs to move, I think. Oh yeah, we do also need to move the camera, that is a good point. So that's another thing that we have to do. And maybe we should do that first. I feel like it probably makes sense to have the camera move first. Alright, so in order for that to happen, we do need to make some minor modifications here. First of all, so the world, the game entities need to be aware of the world. That's the first problem, and currently that is not a thing. So let's fix this here. All right. Alright, so we're going to do a little bit of restructuring here. Basically, I want all of the game objects to be created within the world as opposed to being created in the application. And that's just so that we can keep track of them a bit more easily. So... Alright, there we go. So that's all fine. I guess we could have done all of this directly in the application, but that's not how I did it in the original game, so we'll try to keep it as similar as possible. Alright, so this is where everything actually needs to be spawned from. So let me think, what would be the best way of doing this? We could also just make the world itself into a game object, potentially. I feel like that might actually be the simplest way to do it. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think it matters that much anyway. So I'm gonna steal a little bit of my old code here. Specifically this code. Alright, so this is going to be the code to actually spawn, and I'm going to spawn from the application. Then we'll just add the object. Alright, there we go. Add animal invasions. I'm not sure what an animal invasion is. Is this like a zombie thing, or... I'm not sure I understand the suggestion. Alright, so this is where we add... I guess I don't need this to be... Alright, there we go. Alright, now for this, I guess like technically this is definitely not the right way to do this, but at the same time, I don't know if... I don't think it actually matters that much. Because basically, I'm keeping like 2 different records of every object. Now, the records are a little bit different, so it is kind of necessary, but... Alright, so we'll just do this here. I guess I already wrote a thing for that. I don't know why I'm writing this again. Alright, there we go. Why 2 references? Well, it's basically just because The game engine has a record of all of the game objects, but the game has a little bit more information about them that's not stored at that level. Because the world is going to have to do some, you know, more advanced processing. It's going to have to like search to find objects that are closest and things like that. But we don't need anything too complicated here. So we just need to do this. All right, and then the final thing that I have to do is over here. I guess technically it would have been better to call this like a character, but I think game entity is fine. Alright, so you initialize here, and then there was one other thing, which is want to override this. All right, where am I going? Here we go. All right, and Alright, so I think that should cover pretty much everything that we need in terms of the world. So this is going to change how the game works a little bit. So over here, we're not going to do it this way anymore. It's going to be a little bit different. So we're just going to create a world. Alright, and over here. Okay, so I think everything else should stay the same. The only difference is that it's going to be the world that is spawning everything. Alright, let's see if something is broken. The moment of truth. Alright, so we already got some errors. So it's just something to do with that template function. Am I planning on making it open source? Maybe. It was open source originally. I don't really have any issues with making it open source because there isn't anything that complicated or like that interesting in the source code that I'd be really concerned about people getting. It's just like basic game engine stuff. The main reason why I took it down is just because I don't want people to think that it's like done and usable and then attempt to use it for some reason. And I also don't want people opening like random feature requests and stuff. It's supposed to just be like an internal tool. Alright, so we got the game entity here. And then... okay, then the other issue was that... what is the other issue, actually? Right, so the problem here is that it does not want to... interesting. Also, why is my output window missing? I don't know why it does that sometimes. It just like disappears. Oh, I guess it's because it's up here. Yeah, my Visual Studio decided to just rearrange everything without my permission. Alright, so basically... it's trying to... okay, I see the problem. Okay, that's fine. So that just means that this also needs to be inlined. It's kind of weird because I was just doing this the other day and I basically ran into the same issue and I made the same mistake. Maybe this is a pattern that I need to avoid. Alright. So this needs to be... or, I guess, I don't need to do that. Alright, I'm seeing ban hammers in the chat. Are we good, guys? Is everything good over there? I haven't been looking at the chat in a while. Everything's fine? Alright, I trust you. So what we actually want to do instead is do this. And then just call that and then return this. Have a good day. Well, thanks for watching. I appreciate your viewership. And also thanks for supporting me on Patreon. Alright, so let's get rid of this. Alright, I think that should be fixed now. Okay, so we're back in business, kind of. So basically, we're back to the point where things are spawning, but the only difference is that we have them tracked in this world object, which is going to be useful because we're going to need it for some of the other things that we have to do. And over here, I can just... Alright, there we go. So now I have access to a world pointer, and I think that should be pretty much it as far as... actually, I also need to return this. Alright, now this is basically what's going to allow us to move the camera. So I'm going to return a reference to the camera controller, or I'm going to add a function to do that, I should say. Now, technically, I guess I could do this. I could do this on this end as well, which may be better, potentially. Alright, so... should this go here? Actually, maybe I'll put it here instead. Yeah, the assets are old. I'm just using the original assets that were in the game at the time. Most of which, I don't know if you could say that I made them exactly. They were kind of already made anyway. But yeah, there's just like hundreds of random clip art images and stuff like that. It's nothing really like that impressive. Alright, and I think the way that I had implemented it, which will follow, just to keep things simple here, is that I just had the player defined here. And then I think we can just spawn the player directly. So yeah, we can start getting rid of some of the test code that we added earlier. Alright, yeah, so we'll get rid of this and we'll just migrate that over to our new way of doing it. Alright, so now we have the player directly here, which is also going to be useful because you might need to get a reference to it later. Okay, that... Okay. Alright, so we have the player, and I guess it would probably make sense to update like some of the high level things here, because I'm pretty sure that's what I did before. Alright, and I guess we can do this. Alright, now the only other thing, I guess the application is what has access to the camera. Alright, now there should be a set position, and then we can just set it to the player's world position. Alright, so that should move the camera. We just have to call it now. And I think it would make sense to call it here after all of the other objects have processed already. I don't know if I need that though. Alright, so theoretically this should move the camera, or the camera should at least track the player now. At least in theory. Either that or stuff is just gonna crash. We're gonna find out soon enough. Alright. Okay, so it does not move the camera, so I obviously did something wrong. Now, let me think. Either it's not being called, or maybe I'm just setting the camera position somewhere else that I don't know about. Why did you change back to debug? It's just easier to debug, I guess. It's a lot more convenient if you encounter some kind of like random error. Alright, so why is... Alright, so this happens. This is fine. This is also fine. Alright, so I'm thinking that it's possible that it's just actually, well, this is also kind of not updating either. How do you do the quick implementation of the function from the header? So the way that you do that is if you highlight it and then right click, there's a quick action to define it, and then it'll just automatically create the definition in the source file. You can do that also for like more than one function at a time. Alright, so I'm guessing that what is happening here is my overhead camera controller is not complete, because I've never actually used it before this project, so it wouldn't be that surprising if that was the case. Alright, bunch of vector stuff here. Alright, and here's my position. Is it setting the rest position correctly? Alright, so this is that. Interesting, so it's actually this that's not working. So this is all fine, but I feel like I did something wrong in my math library. So... Why is your Visual Studio so cursed? What's wrong with it? Am I missing something? Isn't this just how it always looks? Or are you talking about... Or are you talking about this? I usually have the disassembly open because, or, I don't know which one you're referring to. The massive console thing? This? I don't know. I'm not really sure what you guys are talking about. It just looks like Visual Studio to me, unless like the stream is messing up and you're just looking at something that that I just have no idea. All right, I think this is the source of the problem. That would be my guess anyway. Or not. I mean, this returns the right value. So that can't be the problem. Okay, I see. I see the problem. Alright, so the issue... Okay. Yeah, the issue is that for some reason I made it so that the position is restricted. Like as in restricted in its location. I don't know why... I don't know why that's the case. But that's pretty easy to fix. Alright, so yeah, basically what I'm doing here is I just want to make it so that that resets automatically, like when this is created. I mean, there are other ways to do it, but this is probably the better way. Alright, and my position, I will just set the range of this to alright, and I think this should give the right value. Alright, let's try this again. Because before, basically it was just restricting the position to just 0, the origin. So I think theoretically it should be fixed now. Alright. Or everything could be completely broken. Yeah, the other issue also that I forgot about is that if I do that, then the camera height is also kind of damaged. So that's also pretty easy to fix. Right, so it sets it here. Alright, what does this do? Okay, it was visible for like a fraction of a second. So we're kind of on the right track, I guess, vaguely. Alright, so this is at 0, 0, 10. Alright, so this minimum position is definitely wrong. Probably because I did this backwards. What am I doing? As in general, or what are we doing right at this second? Because those are two very different questions. Alright, so this here. Okay, so the min position and the maximum position are correct. The rest position is correct. Alright, so I think the only other thing that I can think of is that the position, right, the position is updating here, so my harmonic oscillator is the source of the problem, at least right now. So that's what we're gonna figure out. Which is kind of weird because this is like the last thing that I would expect to be broken. It would almost always be something else. Alright, so this is correct. That is also correct. Okay, I see. Alright, so the other problem was also just a skill issue for me. I just forgot to... Yeah, I'm not sure how I missed that. I just forgot to initialize it. No big deal. Alright, so I put these... Alright, so I put this here, and then this is the code that I was looking for. Alright, there we go. Now we have a moving camera. You may have noticed, this is like the dumbest mistake ever. I basically just forgot to initialize the harmonic oscillator that controls the movement. The only issue that I'm seeing potentially is that it looks a bit too good compared to the old game because it's smooth, and I mean, it's not a bad thing necessarily, but it's just not exactly like it was in the original. But that's fine. I think this is okay. Alright, so now we have a moving camera. We have more or less everything set up in order to do the picking up of the leaves. Alright, so how are we doing for time here? Alright, we've been streaming for 1 hour. And according to this, we also have about 1 hour of work into the project. Alright, so yeah, the next thing to do is to figure out the whole leaf situation. Is the goal to recreate the old game and optimize it, or add more features? Yeah, we're just gonna do a pretty straightforward port. If we actually wanted to make it better, you know, the game is already like 15,000 lines of code, so, you know, trying to redesign an entire new game in such a short span of time is probably not gonna end well. We're gonna, like, okay, it should be clear that the new one is going to be significantly more optimized, and we're gonna try to eliminate, you know, the more ridiculous bugs that basically make it unplayable. Will we be able to download it? I'm not sure. I'll definitely be releasing it to Patreon supporters. Whether or not I release it publicly, well, we'll have to see. It's not exactly my best work, so I don't know if it's something that I want, you know, necessarily released to the public, but... If you could give a percentage, how close do you think Engine Simulator is to being finished? I'm not sure how that's relevant to the stream, but if I was to give you a percentage, I don't know. I wish I knew the answer to that. It's an open-ended project. In terms of the simulation itself, it's actually like pretty far along, and the whole purpose of this project is we're trying to get the actual engine that runs the interface, you know, ready for that part of the interface. Most of it was already done before, but there were some important things that were not ready yet, like for example being able to render instruments in 3D space, which is kind of important. And that's more or less what the purpose of this is. We're only going to be working on this project for about 2 days, 2 or 3 days, and then we're going to go back to what we were working on before. Alright, anyway, so yeah, we have to figure out the picking up of the leaves. So if I remember correctly, and I just want to consult the original implementation here, I'm pretty sure all objects have some sort of flag associated with them to determine whether or not they are carryable. And this would probably be somewhere in this game entity thing. Alright, is there anything here? I mean, there's something to tell if it's living. There is a flag indicating whether or not it is being carried. If you had to choose one, which is better, Engine Simulator or Steam Engine Simulator? I don't know. Is that... I don't think that's very well defined. I mean, define better, like... I'm not sure what that means. I think right now, in terms of the sophistication of the software, definitely Steam Engine Simulator is the more advanced program by far. I mean, it's the most advanced program that I've ever made. Up to this point, anyway. I think it's a little bit deceptive because it looks really simple visually. So people tend to think of it as like a very simple piece of software, but there's actually almost 90,000 lines of code in that project. And most of it is on the simulation side. Alright, so if I go back to the player here... So, where is the space key? Alright, so apparently there's a function called examine surroundings, and I guess this is for... Okay, so this is for getting into vehicles. And then this here, this is for carrying objects. Yeah, we got a lot of if statements to go through here. So this is what controls whether or not you're in jail. I'm so confused, like, how is this meant to work? If your jail time is 0, okay, I mean I guess that's kind of self-explanatory. Alright, when you say the 3D rendering for Engine Simulator, do you mean as in the gauges, or are you referring to the 3D implementation? Well, most of the 3D stuff is already done. I'm mainly referring to basically advanced rendering, because a lot of, like, for example, a lot of people are asking for this motion blur and stuff like that. You need a slightly more sophisticated renderer for stuff like that. And also for the rendering of the instruments, that's also a little bit more complicated. I mean, I'm sure you've seen from my videos, I already have the rendering of the tubes and all of that, so that's not really a problem. That stuff is already taken care of. Yeah, for shadows, you also need multi-pass rendering. Alright, since I'm being basically bombarded with questions about everything other than what I'm doing here, let's just take a moment and answer the questions that you guys have, alright? So, any questions that you have about Engine Simulator or Steam Engine Simulator, this is the moment that you can ask me and I will respond. Yeah, so shadows do need multi-pass rendering, this is true, and that was also part of the work that I'm doing now. How is Steam Engine Simulator update going? Alright, so here's the situation with Steam Engine Simulator. As I kind of explained in my post, I have to be a bit careful with what projects I actually choose to do. So basically, because, you know, imagine this. Try to put yourself in my position here. There are a lot of people that are waiting for Engine Simulator. There are a lot of people that are waiting for Steam Engine Simulator. And at a certain point, the Engine Simulator people start getting antsy, and they're like, "Where Engine Simulator?" And I can tell that my audience is getting a little bit fatigued with Steam Engine Simulator. So that's why I'm not working on it right now, and that's why we're working on Engine Simulator right now. So yeah, since the last time I posted a daily update about it, I haven't really put any work into Steam Engine Simulator. But we are going to go back to it shortly. Alright, can you tell me the minimum specifications for Engine Simulator and Steam Engine Simulator? I mean, they're free, so you could just try it. Like, if you wanted to know if they work on your computer, you could literally just download them and test it out for yourself. The updated version of Steam Engine Simulator is not going to change that much in terms of its CPU usage. It's actually a little bit lower than it used to be. So... alright, where was I here? Have you coded pipe junctions for Engine Simulator yet? All right, so for the pipe junctions, I have some pipe junctions done, but probably not the ones that people are the most interested in. So yeah, yes and no as an answer to that one. All right, next question. Things get complicated, I assume, along with people pressuring you. Yeah, well, it's not too hard to see that I'm just constantly bombarded with people asking for what they want me to be working on, and those things just don't overlap nicely all the time. So, you know, it's a bit complicated. I feel like part of this was just, I don't know, actually. I feel like I probably could have handled this a little bit better in terms of trying to prevent this from happening, but at the same time, I don't know if there's that much that I could have done. It's just, I feel like this is just a natural consequence of any game or any project getting a lot of visibility. There's just like a lot of expectations and people waiting for stuff, which I understand, and I don't think that it's a bad thing necessarily. All right, next question. How hard has it been to develop Engine Simulator? Exceedingly difficult. Probably more difficult. I try to make things seem as simple as possible in my videos, but just take what I show in my videos and multiply that by 100, and that's about how difficult everything is. What are you working on right now? All right. Now stay with me here. We're in a stream, right? And I'm literally programming before your very eyes. You know? That's kind of what we're working on right now. And if you want the bigger picture of what that is, basically it's part of Engine Simulator. So the project that I'm working on right now is Engine Simulator. How long did Engine Simulator take to make? Alright, so the original Engine Simulator, I worked on that project for 6 months. So basically, if we look at the timeline, and you can also see this in my videos. I mean, maybe I can just open it on YouTube probably, just to illustrate here. So if we go to my YouTube channel. All right, so basically this video here, this is when I started working on Engine Simulator. This video, building a physics engine with C++. That was posted, I believe, in either January or February of that year, and then Engine Simulator came out in August. But you'll notice that right in the middle, I created a completely different game called 5 PM. I think I spent about 2 months on that. So yeah, the entirety of the original Engine Simulator took about 6 months of development. Now, the original Engine Simulator was pretty primitive. I mean, like in terms of programming complexity. So, you know, but yeah, I think actually the user interface, how long did that take? Probably like a month or so. So yeah. All right. Hopefully that answers that question. What features would Ant World 2 have? Assuming that Ant World 2 ever exists, which we're not building that, by the way, just to be clear. We're basically just porting Ant World to a different game engine. But if I were to implement a good version of Ant World, I'd basically probably, I don't know, I think I would reduce actually the complexity of the game a little bit, make the goals and the progression a little bit more straightforward. And probably the graphics are terrible, so I'd redo those. Alright, this project is exactly what some people, including myself, have searched for years, and we are watching you develop in real time. Try to take in a good way that people are really excited for what you're building. Yeah, I mean, that's how I try to take it, and I actually do, this is the complicated thing, like, I actually do appreciate that people care about the project. Like, they care enough to come into the server and, like, ask about release dates and stuff like that. So I don't hold it against them, but there are certain people that take it really far. Like if you go on Steam and just look around, like there are some people that get really heated about stuff like this. So, you know, it's a bit of a it's a bit complicated, because on the one hand it's good that they care, but I feel like some people just take things too far on the internet. Alright, if I even tried to make something like Engine Simulator, I would fail dramatically and still would have taken 2 to 4 years. Well, we don't know that for sure. I mean, you have to actually try it. I think you might be surprised. I didn't even know if the project would be possible when I started it. And I did not expect it to actually do well. So I'm just as surprised as anyone else, to be honest. Alright, what advice would you give to people who want to learn to do what you do? Well, I think that probably okay, this is what I would say. I think that people should have more of an open mind as to what projects they try to work on, and also, like for example, we're working on a game that's pretty terrible, but at the same time, you'll notice that even as I'm developing this game, and I've been programming, you know, for a long time now. It's been over a decade at this point. I'm still learning stuff, even from just random silly games like Ant World. So yeah, like basically just doing anything, like literally just doing anything at all is better than doing nothing. And there's always something to learn. That would be probably my piece of advice. Would kill for a complicated version of Steam Engine Simulator. Yeah, don't kill anyone, but I have gotten this a lot from people, and I know, I get it. People want a game where you can build a Steam engine, and yeah, theoretically it is possible. My physics engine is completely generic, so you can build whatever you want in it, but yeah, like adding that to Steam Engine Simulator, that would be, and a lot of people have requested this. It's actually insane how many people have asked, why can't you just add an engine editor to Steam Engine Simulator? Like do you understand how complicated that is? Like that's like a whole, you know, for a free game, it's just impossible. But anyway. All right. One more question, how to prepare for success. I guess I talked about that a little bit in one of my videos. And it's a good question. I think that generally speaking, you should probably just assume that the worst is going to happen. Like here, take my example. You know, I'm basically an example of how not to prepare for success. You know, like look at how messed up the original release of Engine Simulator was. Like when that video first went viral, the Engine Simulator code base, there was no exe to download anywhere. It was just code. So I was just bombarded with people being like, how do I install this game? It makes no sense. But what they were actually trying to do was build from source, which not a lot of people can do that. You have to have like programming knowledge in order to do that. Anyway, like that was just an example of, I didn't even think that it was possible to have a project be successful, and as a result, like the initial release was a complete disaster. Steam Engine Simulator is another example. So that started off as basically being a meme, and I thought, like, I don't know, it's just kind of funny, Steam Engine Simulator on Steam, lol, and then I released it. And I was expecting, you know, maybe a few hundred people to download it. It's mainly just like a joke for my YouTube audience. And now it's sitting at like 350,000 downloads, and almost every day I get questions about when is this releasing, when's the update. So like basically, I didn't take the project seriously, and it just ended up being way more successful than I thought it would be, and it just kind of ended up being a disaster. So yeah. So there's an example of how not to prepare for success, if you see what I'm saying. Yeah, apparently I didn't learn from my mistakes the first time. But yeah, I think that the important takeaway is that you can't really underestimate the potential for success. Anytime you do anything, if you put in a lot of work into it, there is a very good chance that you will succeed. And if that happens, being prepared for it is definitely better than not being prepared for it. So yeah, just assume the worst, I guess. That's my piece of advice. Alright, so I think I've addressed most of the questions here. Hopefully everyone has gotten all of their Steam Engine Simulator and Engine Simulator questions out of the way. I promise all of this work is directly related to the progression of Engine Simulator. I know it seems like I'm working on just completely random stuff, but this is a 2 to 3 day diversion in order to create a YouTube video. Alright, that's basically what's happening here. But underneath, what we're actually doing, in the grand scheme of things, is we're just demonstrating that the game engine works. Now, I could have made a video called I work on Engine Simulator's game engine, but I don't think anyone is going to watch that video, and that's why I couldn't make that video. So yeah, hopefully that explains that. I have learned that it is a pain to make simulators. Yeah, very relatable. It's true, they're very unforgiving pieces of software, and it's not for anyone who doesn't want to dedicate many hours of their lives. Alright, so... Okay, last question. Okay, we got one more question, and then we'll go back to whatever we were doing before. So... You believe it'll be possible to make an importer of CAD models into Engine Simulator? Well, so okay, here's the complicated thing about that. The physics engine is not aware of geometry in the traditional sense. At least not in the like the geometry that you would export from a CAD program is not the same kind of geometry that the simulator understands. Now, that being said, you could definitely model an exhaust system in the simulator, and it can definitely have like real, it can have real measurements and all of that, but I don't think it'll ever be possible. It's not really even possible with any kind of simulation software to just import a CAD model and then have it figured. That's like really advanced CFD. Like if you have, you know, like a 3D simulation or something like that, it's a little bit beyond, you know, a little bit beyond what Engine Simulator is. So yeah, that's probably not going to be possible, but modeling like a pre-existing model in the simulator, that should be possible theoretically. And yeah, just to be clear, like it's I talked about it a little bit in my videos, but the simulation techniques that I'm using in Engine Simulator are 100% like real engineering techniques. And up until like the 90s, they were pretty much at the cutting edge of engine simulations. And oddly enough, engine simulations have not really progressed that far since then. I think the technology more or less like peaked around that time. And recently there have been like other simulation technologies that are more popular, so those techniques are not used that much anymore. But that being said, I don't consider Engine Simulator to be like a real engineering tool, and I don't want to market it that way for liability reasons. I think it could probably be used for that, but I'm not going to officially recommend that you use it for that. Alright. I think we got all the questions out of the way, I think anyway. If there are any other questions, you can let me know in the chat, but it's kind of hard to look at the chat and program at the same time, so I'm not ignoring you, I'm just not looking over there. Alright, the moderator has a question. Alright, I'm ready. When Ant Theft Auto 6? Well, it would be kind of funny because then people could apply the meme format to Ant World. As in, like, we literally got Ant Theft Auto 6 before GTA 6. But yeah, I guess technically I could just release this as as Grand Theft Auto 6. I don't know how Rockstar would feel about that, but alright, so what were we working on? Basically, we were working on the ability to carry items. Alright, we got one more question. Would there be sound exporting in Engine Simulator, or would that need to be a plugin? Yes, there will be sound exporting that will come with the program itself, mainly just because so many people have asked for it. And it's actually not that complicated of a feature to implement, so yeah. More than likely that will come just with the game. You won't need a plugin for that. Alright, so I guess I have to remind myself of what I was doing. So yeah, we were trying to carry things. Now, I think probably the easiest way to do this is in the game entity, we want to keep track of whether or not this object can be carried. Alright, so we'll just add a function for that. Alright, there we go. Actually, now that I think about it, it might make sense also to have basically a set of flags, and then that might make it easier to search later, but I don't know. I don't want to get too fancy here. We'll try to keep this as simple as possible. So basically, we have a flag that just indicates whether or not the game entity can be carried. So for things like the leaf, we know for sure that that will always be carryable. So alright, and over here in this initializer, just set this. Alright, there we go. So now we know whether or not the leaf can be carried. So in the world, this is when we start adding some of the more cursed features. So basically we need the ability to search for items that can be carried. And I guess we also need a position for that. Alright, so in a real game, probably what you would do in this situation is you'd have like a scene graph so you could efficiently search through the world. We're not going to do that because we just don't have time. It's probably not necessary. Bounding box, kind of, yeah. I don't think we actually need a bounding box for this particular situation. So, okay, it's complaining about something here. Alright, so what is it actually complaining about? Oh, I see. Alright, so yeah, we're basically just going to search through all of the objects. It's going to be a really primitive linear search, nothing too complicated. Okay, so we just need to find this. And actually, I guess we don't need, we can just do the squared magnitude in this case. Alright, and that's pretty much it. So basically what this function is going to do, or actually we're missing one small detail. We have to make sure that it can be carried. Alright, there we go. Alright, so what this function does is it basically searches through all of our objects and it just checks to see whether there are any entities that can be carried by the player or whatever position we're searching compared to, and it'll just return that object. So pretty simple. And now we can try to apply this to the player. Now, the only thing that is slightly complicated about this, although I don't know if it's actually going to be a problem or not, is how it's going to work for the position. Now, technically, I don't think it's going to be that complicated, but we're going to find out. We're going to do it the really simple way first, and if that doesn't work, then we'll have to figure out a better solution. So basically, now I think in the original game I measured, I don't remember the size of the ant asset. Because basically we don't want to measure necessarily from where the player is located, we want to measure from the mouth location. And I guess that would be at about, I don't know, maybe 40. All right, so then we can just calculate the global position. All right, there we go. And now we can search for the closest entity. Right, there we go. So now we have that. Alright, so I think it was the space key that I had before. Alright, so this is basically where things start actually getting a little bit complicated. We have to be careful because it's entirely possible that when we go to pick up an object, by the time we pick it up, a lot of things could have happened to it. Like, for example, it could have been deleted, or maybe it got picked up by another entity. So that is something that we have to be aware of while we're doing this. Now, let's see here. Probably we may need a step after this in order to make sure that that doesn't happen. But I think for the most part it should be okay. Alright, so for the game entity. Alright, what's going on in the chat? Kinda implies something not good. Maybe? I have no idea. Maybe I don't have enough of an imagination to figure out what that means. Alright, so basically when we start off, we don't have any carry object. Alright, so now we have a function that basically, I'm pretty sure this is more or less how I implemented it in the original game. So this basically says, alright, we're going to carry an entity, so that's going to be our carry object, and we set a flag that basically says, okay, this object is being carried, which should theoretically prevent other objects from attempting to pick it up. So that should be fine. Alright, and now over, I guess, in the player. Alright, so there are a few checks that I know we're going to have to make here. So we want to make sure, but I don't want to I don't want to overcomplicate the code in the wrong place. So for now, we're not going to check to see if the object has been deleted. We're actually going to check that at a later time. And I'm just going to do this. Okay, so I think that should be fine. So it carries that. Now, this is where, so there are a few different ways of doing this. Now, you could do it so that when you carry something, you actually, like it actually directly controls the object's transform, which we could try that. It could maybe present an issue later when we drop the object, but we're gonna figure this out here. Okay, so we're gonna set the parent to my own transform here. And then I guess, okay, so because I know for sure that this code is going to be used later when it comes to other things that also have to carry stuff. That's why I'm trying to write this in more generic terms here. When does the stream end? It ends in, I guess, like an hour and 15 minutes. It's 3 hours long in total. Yeah, if you're in Europe, I wouldn't stay for the whole thing because it's going to be pretty late over there. But we are going to be back to streaming tomorrow. I mean, there's already way more people in here than I thought would be left. I thought there would for sure be like just 5 people in here. Yeah, I think also in the next few days the streams are not going to be this late. Today was just a little bit different because my schedule is different today. Alright, anyway, so here... Now we're going to implement the drop later, but the important thing is that we have to know where the... basically where the pickup point is, probably. Alright, so we'll default to basically the local origin of the object. And when we go to carry something, we'll set the global position to my carry point. All right. Alright, so I'm just adding some functions here to basically get the local and the global carry point for this particular object, because it could be different for different kinds of objects. Alright, and now I think that should be pretty much everything. Just change that to this, and then on the player I do have to adjust this a little bit. So this code is not necessary anymore. We'll come back to it, but for now this is not necessary. Alright, there we go. So theoretically, I think that this might work to some degree. It is entirely possible that it's going to break something, and we're not going to be able to drop the object after we pick it up. So that's kind of, that's a bit of a problem, but we're going to cross that bridge when we get to it. Okay, so... and it works. Excellent. So as you can see, I walked up to the leaf, I pressed space, and I'm now carrying it. Now there is a slight issue, which is that it's in the wrong place. But also, the other problem is that I don't necessarily want it to just follow the ant's location. I think that it obviously makes more sense to have it near the ant's mouth as opposed to here. So that's another thing that we have to fix. And also the orientation doesn't update, which is not ideal. I think it'd be better if it changed. I actually don't think that it changed in the original game. I can confirm this. So in the original game, I'm pretty sure it's the same kind of situation, so we'll just wait for a leaf to spawn somewhere. Alright, usually it doesn't take this long. Okay, there we go. We have a drug leaf. So yeah, they actually do not, or do they? Am I just getting confused? No, I don't think they change orientation, but it does at least roughly match the ant's mouth position. I'd leaf it in the back of the ant and call it a day. Yeah, for a project like this, it's honestly not even a bad idea. Yeah, but it definitely doesn't rotate. And also, my layers are so messed up. Alright, so, but I don't think it should be... How do I drop this? There's no way I didn't make this space as well. Did I actually not do that? Alright, never mind. Doesn't matter. So, okay. So we're gonna adjust this so that it actually goes to the right location. So the first thing is we want it, we'll start with the easiest part, which is making it actually go to the ant's mouth area, because that's probably the part that looks the most messed up. That's actually fairly easy. We just need to be able to change the carry point. Alright, there we go. So I think that's actually pretty much all we need. And if we go to the player now, and in this initialize, I'm just going to take my original estimate, which is probably wrong. But we're going to set this. Alright, now I actually don't know if this position is correct, but we're going to find out. I think that it's definitely going to be wrong for the orientation, but you'll see what I mean in a second. If we go to pick this up... Okay. So, what I'm gathering from this is... it means that they're moving to either somewhere that's way too far away, or they're moving somewhere... that's interesting. So is this actually too far? Because usually if something disappears like that, what project is that? Don't worry about it. So, okay, there's something... Alright, I mean this looks correct, so why is it in such a weird state, is my question. Alright, just ignore these hacks for a second. There's method to my madness. Alright, I just want to make sure that the... Okay, so there's your problem. Now, how did that happen? How did that happen? So the X position is correct, the Y position is totally wrong. And I'm pretty sure it has to do with here. So basically the parent in this case... If you're wondering what I'm doing, basically I'm trying to make it so that the object ends up in the right position relative to the ant. But the only problem with that is that something is going wrong with the matrix math that leads up to that point. Pretty much all of this code is like completely untested, by the way. So, yeah. I'm not too surprised that random stuff like this would come up. Okay, so let's try to figure this out here. So it's going to try to take the inverse matrix, which is in a completely messed up state. But that's not too surprising. Okay, so this is not, it's not getting updated for some reason. I see, okay. Okay, I think I understand what's happening here. So that was already set here. Basically, for some reason, the inverse matrix is completely messed up when it shouldn't be. So that's the mystery right now. Alright, so what I'm going to do is we're just going to walk through the code from this point, and we're just going to identify exactly what happens. Yeah, I mean, the matrix math should be right, but there's something else happening that's causing this to behave strangely. Alright, so in the parent here, yeah, the matrices are not matrixing. Alright, so that is set correctly. Now, are these all correct? Okay, so the inverse is already messed up. So I have a feeling that the inverse has just always been messed up, which is strange. I might have to. This was originally implemented in Steam Engine Simulator, so maybe I just ported it over wrong. I'm not sure. But let's check here. So where we update, let me make sure that this is correct. So we have this here. Interesting. Okay, so the inverse scale, that's all correct. The inverse translation is definitely not correct. Yeah, it's just an alias. It's just they're not actually different. It's the same namespace. Alright, so why is this position so strange? Alright, I'm gonna restart this, and I want to look at it in a bit more detail here. Because definitely the inverse is not being updated, or it's not being calculated correctly. And it could have something to do with this code here. Alright, so the original one is fine. Inverse one is completely messed up. Okay. So yeah, for some reason, it seems that my transpose function is broken. And this appears to be the non-SIMD implementation, which is the one that I don't use that often, so that would kind of explain it. So this is where the problem is. Alright. Alright, let's look into detail here. Now we're in the really deep parts of the game engine. Well, not even really the game engine. This is also an open source library, by the way. It's on my GitHub. And this is part of the reason why I don't necessarily want to release a lot of this, is because not all of it is used that frequently. The parts that I use frequently, usually work fine, but this is a piece of code that I don't actually use that much. I could just change it to the working implementation, but we may as well just fix this since we're already looking at it. Alright, so I feel like it's probably here somewhere where stuff starts getting messed up. So this is fine. Alright, so things are not messed up yet. Where do things start getting messed up? Alright, so that apparently it works fine in this context. And this is for... Interesting. Okay. Alright, so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna step through it one more time. Isn't programming just the most exciting thing ever? This is another reason why I don't show programming in my videos very much, because it's mostly just this. Which is kind of depressing, but that's just the reality of how programming works. What's the problem? Well, the problem is that when the matrix is transposed, its values are just completely messed up. Now, there are a few potential ways that this could happen, and that's what I'm trying to figure out here. Because basically, if the inverse of the matrix is messed up, then it's going to be impossible to set the leaf in the correct location relative to the player. So that's basically the problem here. Alright, so over here... Okay, so this is the part in particular. This is the part in particular that I want to pay attention to. Right, and so it sets the position here. Alright, now I feel like around here is where stuff starts going wrong. Yeah, we got bugs in our bug game. Technically, it's not even in the game. It's actually part of some other code that's adjacent to the game, I guess. Alright, so over here just returns the transform. Alright, so an update is not needed, so nothing happens. Alright, now this is the part that I have to pay attention to. Alright, so now we're in the depths here. So it does this. This all looks pretty normal. Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do something that's a completely pointless exercise. Because at some point we're going to encounter these bugs later, so, you know, it's something that's going to happen inevitably. Alright, now here... This all looks correct. This all looks correct. That looks correct. Alright, now it's right here that things start going wrong, right at this moment. So this is what we have to pay attention to. Alright, so the scale is fine. The translation... Okay, I see. So by this point, the position is already totally messed up. So maybe I was wrong. Maybe the transpose actually is fine, but something else is happening here. Because by the time we got to this point, our position is already just totally wrong. But yeah, this is on GitHub, and the main reason why I wrote it myself is not necessarily for the game. It's actually used in the simulation as well, but I don't use this code very much because it's just way slower. The SIMD ones are checked very thoroughly, but not these ones. Okay. Alright, so this is fine. Alright, so by this point, the inverse... Interesting, okay. Why the SIMD versions can't be used? They can, and they probably should be used, to be honest, but... I mean, since we've already spent a bunch of time looking into this, it probably makes sense to fix it. But yeah, technically speaking, you can just replace all of this with the faster versions. But this should work, though. That's the main reason why I don't want to leave it in its current state. The other minor issue, or the other reason why this library is used on the game engine side is specifically if you want to communicate with the GPU. The SIMD ones are fine for that as well, but sometimes the way they're arranged in memory can be kind of weird. Does C++ even have native SIMD? Yeah, kind of. They're called compiler intrinsics, so they appear like normal functions, but they actually just simplify basically into single machine instructions. But yeah, it basically just appears like a normal function. I'm not sure. Yeah, more or less. Like basically, the compiler intrinsics for the most part just get converted into single instructions. Alright, so the question is, how do we get to a state where the inverse is messed up this badly? That's the real question. How did that happen? Alright, so that's all. Alright, let's see. So yeah, it's definitely, it's weird because the rest of the matrices are completely fine. It's specifically that one that's in a bad state. How are the ants coming along? not bad. It's mainly just, there are some math issues that we're figuring out here. The thing is, like, this matrix is totally messed up. Like, I'm not sure how this even happens. I mean, it's weird because the numbers are, like, kind of right in their placement visually, but the numbers themselves are completely wrong. That is a mystery. How does that happen? Alright, so let's say that I start here instead. Where are we at? We're figuring out some math problems. We're having a math skill issue here. Like, theoretically, this shouldn't be that hard to solve, but I mean, that's basically any problem in programming. It's probably gonna be like the simplest thing ever. And yeah. Did you copy and paste past numbers from the old program? Not yet. We haven't gotten to that point yet. Alright, so by the time I got to here, the inverse is already totally just completely messed up. So how does that happen? So let's say hypothetically I stop the program here. Okay, so the inverse is actually fine. That's odd. And on the next frame, okay, so I was kind of worried that this could be some kind of like weird, could be some kind of weird memory issue, but thankfully that does not appear to be the case, because it's very predictable. So yeah, it basically just happens immediately. It happens immediately right after this point. That's what happens when you have to break an engine simulator and make it Grand Theft Ant. Alright, just to be clear, I have not broken anything, alright? It's not like I hacked Engine Simulator all for the purposes of this Ant game. It's quite the contrary, actually. So, alright, we're gonna do a bit of an experiment here. I have a feeling this is gonna be something really dumb, and then I'm gonna look stupid. Even stupider than I already look. So is this... okay, it's already messed up. Alright, we're getting closer. We're really close to finding the problem now. I know this is like... I know this is not the most fascinating thing to listen to, probably. So, you know... sorry, I guess, but this is basically what programming is. It's just making mistakes and then trying to figure out what your mistakes are. So this is all fine. It's in here. This is where things are going wrong. And now we're gonna find out. Alright, so this is where it happens. This is exactly the moment where everything goes wrong. Because the inverse is good, and theoretically, right after this function finishes, the inverse is gonna be messed up. So something happened in between now and in the next few seconds. So, position is fine. Now the negative position. Oh, okay. I see. I see. Alright, I think I know what I did wrong. I'm starting to understand. Yeah, that's not right. I actually don't know if that's the cause, but I know for sure that that's wrong. Now, the scale, that also looks fine, so there's nothing wrong there. And boom, our inverse is blown up. Alright. Okay, I found the problem. Can anyone see the problem in this screenshot? I don't have any reward to give anyone, but can anyone see the issue here? It's right in plain sight, and it's definitely a mistake on my part. I'm not sure how. I must have just copied it wrong, because there's no way this worked in anywhere else. The reference, the negative, well, yeah, let me give you a hint here, alright? The problem is here, but why is this wrong? Because, in theory, it should be fine, right? I mean, it's the negative position, so you can barely read it. Okay, maybe I should zoom in. Alright, so here's the problem. We have this translation matrix here, and basically, we're calculating the inverse translation, which is of course just the negative position, right? Or is it? Or is it actually the negative position? So here's the issue. The issue is that the position is not just a three-dimensional vector. It actually has a 1 at the end because it is a four-dimensional vector. So yeah, basically we're negating, we're negating the W like total degens, and yeah, that just broke everything. So, and it worked fine before because the translation was 0, and as soon as we changed the mouth position, boom, we just blew everything up. So yeah, pure skill issue. Thankfully this is not, I was really concerned this was some kind of like crazy memory problem. I mean, I doubt it. It wasn't even an issue with my math library, so I prematurely blamed that. 4 dimensions, yeah. Technically, a lot of these transformations happen in 4 dimensions. It's not actually as complicated as it sounds, but... Alright, let's try this again. Okay. So, let's see what happens here. Just want to confirm that this gets updated correctly. So... Now this still looks wrong. So even though that issue that we were just looking at was definitely a problem, it may not have been the only problem. There could actually be more problems. So we're actually going to check this one more time, but we're going to check it here, more close to the issue. It wasn't a problem with the math library. We don't know that for sure yet. We're not 100% certain. I doubt that it would be, but it's entirely possible. Alright, so we're gonna run through this code again, and this time, or wait, I just stepped over, never mind, we're gonna do that one more time. Alright, and step in again, so this is where we want to step in. This is correct. Alright, so something goes wrong here again. Now, we know for sure that this was a problem, but it should be fixed now. If I do this... Okay. So the inverse translation is fine now. Alright, the matrix is fine. Now this is where things start going wrong. It's weird because they all look completely normal. How does that work? It's kind of annoying because Visual Studio doesn't like to run this stuff directly. And then it's just immediately blown up. Alright. Yeah, breakpoints is, breakpoints are pretty game-changing. Okay, so there's a problem here, which I don't fully understand. I do not fully understand what's happening. So there's something deeper. We fixed one issue. which honestly, I think the game engine might already correct for this, so it might not even been affecting anything. It's definitely wrong, but maybe not. There's definitely something deeper happening here. So we're gonna do some further testing here. So since Visual Studio does not want to cooperate and run these operations, we're gonna have to do them manually. So all right, and we're gonna do this here. All right, let's try this again. Yeah, there's something. I can barely read the screen. Yeah, maybe the resolution might be better on YouTube. I don't know. Is anyone else having issues reading the screen? What is the issue that we're having? Well, basically, some of the math is not mathing correctly. This is the problem. It's kind of hard to explain, but that's what we're trying to figure out right now. Alright, so these statements should help with the situation. Alright, so it's already wrong right out of the gate, pretty much. Interesting. What is the operation name? Alright, so I think actually, now that I'm looking at it again, I think there is a problem with the transpose. There is nothing else that I can see that would cause this. But it's a really weird, I guess it makes sense because it's not used anywhere else. And I don't think I've ever, yeah, it's never actually been like exercised, I guess. Alright, so very mysterious. Okay, so here is the problem. So somewhere in here, things start going wrong. Alright, so the target is, that makes sense because it's not initialized. The source is here. Alright, so we're gonna step through this and let's see what happens. Okay. Alright, I'm seeing, I think, what's happening here. That is... Okay. I thought my 13-year-old self was dumb, but this is... I don't know. I feel like this is even stupider. Why am I... Why unsigned int and not size t? I don't know. I think it's mostly for performance reasons in this particular piece of code. Why are you constantly... temp is a... redefining. Well, it's just because we're doing a transfer here. But here is the funny part. It doesn't do... Why does it... This is such a weird mistake. Like... But yeah, no, this is definitely broken. This is where the problem is. So, I know you guys probably can't see, but the issue, and I'm sure probably at least a few of you maybe know what a matrix transpose is. It's basically where you like flip a matrix, you reflect it along the diagonal. But here's the thing. You have to actually copy the diagonal values. For some reason, I'm not doing that, which is a really weird mistake. It's just leaving the initial diagonal values uninitialized. So yeah, that's for sure not right. Technically, I believe this should be just I in order for this to work correctly. Let me think. Does that make sense? I think so. So technically the correct way to do this is you would have to copy the diagonal separately, but let's just keep this simple for now. Technically, I think this might do some unnecessary calculations potentially. All right, let's just try this. This might take a while, maybe like a minute or so to build, because it's like in a really, it's a deep header. It's kind of hard to explain, but what does temp mean in this case? Oh, it just means temporary. It's just because, like, we want to store, or wait, do you actually need that in this case? Okay, I take back what I said before. This is actually unnecessary, because we're not overwriting this. I don't know what I was thinking with this. This is stupid. Yeah, this is not necessary. For some reason, I think I was thinking that I was doing this operation in place, but it's not in place. Or wait, actually it could be. Yeah, it could be in place. That's the danger. All right, I'll explain in a second. But yeah, now I remember. It is a bit convoluted, but it is necessary that you do it that way. Okay, I'll explain why in a second. It's actually kind of interesting. All right, so with this change, is it fixed now? All right, it appears to be fixed. All right. No problem. That only took an unbelievable amount of time for a single line, not even a single line, single character change. All right, so allow me to explain here. So this actually is necessary because source and target could be the same. That's the danger. So if you just assume that if you assume that source and target are different, then yeah, this is unnecessary. But you don't know that. That's the danger. And I probably encountered that at some point, and that's why I did it this way. All right, but I think it's fixed now, thankfully. All right, so let's try this again. This code is not necessary. Alright, there we go. Now, I know it looks wrong, but it's only wrong because it works only if the ant is in a particular orientation. So that's, but it does work though. So the issue here is we're not actually changing the ant's transform, we're actually changing the ant's images transform, and those two are not the same thing. So that's the next thing to address here. Let's make it so that, alright, so here is the set orientation. And pretty sure this happens somewhere in the process. So this is where it sets the orientation of the ant. I think, let me think, does it make sense to do that? Probably. So if we just change it to this, I think theoretically that would fix it. Alright, there we go. And as you can see, it works perfectly. So, and in fact, it actually updates the leaf's orientation now, so it matches the player, and it appears to like always be. This is actually an improvement over the original game. I mean, this, like, this did not have to be this complicated. If it wasn't for that really, like, deep issue in the math library, this would have been, like, 5 minutes. But I mean, this is a very good representation of what a lot of programming is like. I mean, you're trying to work on something that seems really simple, and you encounter a bug that, you know, just doesn't make sense, and you don't really necessarily know where it's coming from. Now, the funniest thing, or here, imagine this, and this is one of the reasons why I like to write my libraries myself. imagine that you were doing this and you discovered an issue, but it was in code that you don't have any control of. See, that's where a huge amount of time wasting enters the equation. And yeah, that's one of the reasons why I tend to just prefer writing my own libraries. It is a little bit more work sometimes, but in those cases where you're trying to get someone else's library to do what you want and it doesn't, that's, I mean, we're talking like potentially days of just lost work there. All right, if you had a game idea and you could never make it happen with your current knowledge at the time, and someone else makes a game similar to your idea and it's successful, are you in the wrong if you do end up making your game and the games are similar? I mean, people make similar games all the time. Like, I don't think that that's a bad thing necessarily. It depends on yeah. I don't really know too much about the like legalities of that, but I would say ethically, I don't think it's that much of a problem. All right, so that was an odyssey. What time is it? All right, we got 30 minutes left. We did end up wasting a lot of time on that issue, so we're about 3.5 hours into this project at this point. But it was a good thing that we fixed that error, because I probably would have encountered it later during the during development anyway. So still a good thing that it was addressed. All right, now the next thing that we want to do is we want to actually be able to drop the things that we're carrying. So that's kind of important. If we go over to the game entity over here, so we already have a function for carry. We just want to be able to drop. And I think that for the most part, they're going to be similar, but we do have to be a little bit careful here. Let's see. Okay. So obviously we don't want to drop if we're not holding anything. Actually, I did this backwards. And all right, so this is where we have to be a little bit careful. So we have to cache the current location of the object. So that's the first order of business here. Right, so we'll cache the global position, and we also have to cache the orientation. Now this could become an issue later because the way that we're handling orientation is not the best right now, because for some objects it's like fixed to 90-degree increments, but it's not the case for all objects. But we'll fix that later. So the orientation here. All right, so I think what we're actually going to have to do is we need a function to get the global orientation. All right, and we're actually going to have to add that directly to the game engine here. All right, so in order to do that, I guess you just have to... I guess it's not that complicated. Alright, this is about the time where Visual Studio has a moment and doesn't want to actually do things for me anymore. There are some things in Visual Studio that I wish that Microsoft would fix, and this is one of those. I find that the IntelliSense kind of just like decides to stop working sometimes, and that is a little bit annoying. I will say that. Other than that, it served me well over the years, but that is one of my annoyances with the program. Alright, so this should be pretty simple, I think. It's basically going to be identical to this. What is IntelliSense? It's basically the system that gives you like hints and stuff. Like, you know how like if I make a mistake, it'll like underline it in red or whatever. It's just the system in Visual Studio that tries to give you hints about what you're doing wrong. Alright, so this is wrong. Alright, and that should be correct now, so let me make sure I have the order right. So we want to multiply the parent . Alright, there we go. So that is the global orientation. Yeah, it's kind of like spell check. Very similar concept. And now in the game entity over here, so alright, so now we have this, that's fine. Okay, so I think that should be most of it. We also have to tell the object being carried that it is no longer being carried. And there we go. So now we just need a keybind for that. And okay, so that's one other thing, I guess. Alright, I just added a function basically to return the current object being carried. And the reason for that is because I just want it so that if I press space and I'm not holding anything, then it'll attempt to carry something. And otherwise it'll just drop that thing. Alright, there we go. So let's see what happens here. Alright, so I pick up the object fine, and then I drop it, and it does end up in the right location. Alright, and the only bug that I notice is that I did not reset the carry object, which is kind of important, so it just thinks that it's still carrying something, and it's not. Alright, and I think Or maybe I just blow something up. That's also an option. Okay, yeah. That was that was a dumb mistake. So I shouldn't have done it here. Probably here would have been better. Okay, now it should work. I think. Okay, so it mostly worked, but it's just the orientation is wrong. At least the position is correct, but the orientation seems to just reset to what it was before, which is interesting. At least I can pick up the other things now. Alright, so yeah, I think it would probably be better to fix that. Now do the drug leaf. I don't think there are any, we got lucky, there are, well, depends on how you look at it, I guess, but there are no drug leaves that spawned in this time. Alright, so the only issue remaining is that the orientation seems to just reset to the original orientation, which is not what we want. So why would that happen? Alright, so over here. So if I pick this up and then I drop it, orientation. So this all looks fine. It's possible that it might be getting reset somewhere. Yeah, now that I think about it, I think that is what's happening. Yeah, this was kind of what I was worried about, which is that, yeah, it's just what's gonna happen is the game entity itself is going to reset the orientation. Now, if we remove that, it would fix the problem, but yeah, it would fix the problem, but then we would just have a different problem. Alright. That's fine. So, I think this is more of a cosmetic thing. It is possible to fix, but it's, maybe not worth the effort at this stage in development. Maybe if we come back to it later, we can always fix it. But functionally, it works now. The only thing is that it does not end up committing the orientation. And, yeah, but other than that, it basically works as intended. Yeah, we're gonna fix this soon, TM. In other words, probably not. We don't want to make this too good, okay? We want to stay roughly in the same spirit as the original. But alright, so now we have an ant who can pick up leaves. That's fine. So what time is it here? Alright, we got 15 minutes left. I think what would make sense as the next feature to implement is to eat the leaves. Because that is kind of a critical feature. Now, there aren't really any in the original game. There are no fancy animations or anything like that for eating the leaves. They kind of just disappear. So that's what we're gonna do. Now, theoretically, this should be very straightforward. We just need to create a function. Whoa, okay, that did not turn out like I wanted it. Alright, so basically, we want to do a few different things. If we're not carrying something, then we don't really care about this function. Does the ant have internal health or hunger? Yes, it does. We haven't programmed that yet, but that is what we're going to do now. Okay, so in order to eat the leaf, we need to first of all, we need to, what do we need to do? Alright, so we need to set that it is deleted, so that the game engine knows to delete the object. Then we drop the object. And I think that more or less... Now, we're going to get to the nutritional value in a second. We're going to have to set a flag probably in the game entity to determine whether or not the object is edible, because we don't want the player to eat like boxes. And there are boxes in this game, which we may or may not get to later. So let's see. Actually, I think I may have forgot to make a keybind for this. So let's do that. Yeah, player eating rocks would be kind of amusing. Given my programming skills at the time, I may as well have been eating rocks, to be honest. Alright, there we go. So we'll just call it here. Okay, and there we go. I have eaten the leaf. And the game didn't even crash. Alright, that's fine. So now we have to deal with the nutritional element, which is, you know, kind of important for eating. What about the rock? I think I can't pick up the rock because it's not marked as carryable. So yeah, we've already programmed that out of the game. Although we could, okay. If you really want to eat the rock, it's actually not too difficult to do. We just have to set the can be carried flag. Does eating the object destroy it? Yeah, it destroys it. I sound sad the game didn't crash. I think surprised, maybe. There we go, we can pick up the rock, and not only can we pick it up, we can also eat it. There we go. Tasty. Okay, so yeah. Let's get rid of this because we do not want to be eating rocks. The rock isn't big. Well, take that up with my 13-year-old self. This game is just full of bugs and lies. Okay. So basically what we want is over here in the game entity, we want to add another flag for edible. And then we'll just add something to set that flag, which I guess would be here somewhere. Or wait, I mean, yeah, there we go. And then just create a function here. Alright, and the final step is that we need to, I guess like the simplest way to do this is to just make a virtual function for the nutritional value. By default, we'll just return 0 because most things are not going to be edible. Now for the leaf, we can override that function and we'll just return this. I guess for some reason I wanted it to be an integer. Yeah, because in the original game it was an integer. Alright, well we'll just keep it as an integer then. Just go back here. Just return 0 by default. And we'll change this. Okay. Alright, and now the final step is, I don't remember, I think the player has, so the player has health, and they must have hunger, I would assume. Or maybe that is health, I don't know. Okay, so they do have hunger. These are so random. So we have health, hunger, and energy. I don't know what the difference between these things, I don't know functionally what they do, but... Alright. We'll just add them. We'll just add them as specified. We're not gonna analyze this too much. So we need... Now the weird thing is that I kind of made them floats for some reason, which would make sense that I would do that. But I don't know. Alright, well, we're just gonna write it as specified in the game. So health defaults at, or it starts at 350, completely random starting point. I don't know why. Hunger starts at 1, which also makes no sense. And energy starts at 350. The magical 350, which is, I guess, where you want to be. Now, when you eat something, how does that get processed in the game? Oh yeah, and we forgot about the intoxication level, or the effect level as I called it. So yeah, when you eat the special leaf, then bad things happen to your body. Or good things, I guess, depending on what your attitude is towards this particular leaf. So, where does any of this even get processed? Okay, so here's the eat function. Okay, so it checks to see if it's edible. And then it adds the nutritional value to the hunger. Okay, the terminology here was definitely wrong. It's weird because, like, why would nutritional value add to the hunger? I feel like it should have subtracted. Do I want to fix that, or do I just not care enough? And the energy, you add the nutritional value divided by 2. Okay, I see. And then this, I guess, is just to clamp everything. Alright, I'm gonna keep this simple. We're just gonna implement it as it was implemented originally. Hunger should be named sustenance, maybe. Yeah, definitely, I'm just gonna... If anyone asks, it was my 14-year-old self's problem. The reason why I oscillate between 13 and 14 is because it was literally both, like, right in the middle of that age. Like, I think I started it when I was 13, and when it was done, I was 14. So, you know, some average in between those two. Can we eat other ants? No. No, that was not a feature. There was no cannibalism in the original game. I didn't want it to be, like, rated A or something. Rated M for mature, I think, is fine for this Grand Theft Auto installment. Okay, anyway, I'm getting sidetracked again. So, in the eat, let's go ahead and do this here. Now, I kind of changed my mind about the nutritional value being an integer. I think I am gonna make it a floating point, just because I think the original intention that I was going for in the game was for it not to be an integer. I don't know why I did it that way, ultimately. And we'll just update it here. Alright, and now for the player, so when I eat something... So first we have to check if we are carrying an object, and we have to check... we have to check that the carried object is edible. Alright, so those are all the checks that we have to do. And now if we copy exactly as specified, we add to the hunger, which is the most confusing thing ever, the nutritional value of the carried object. And then for the energy, we add half of that, which makes perfect sense. I mean, clearly I based this on science. And I guess the other thing that we can do is we can clamp this. I didn't do it this way in the original game, but we have technology now. So we'll just clamp this in between the 0.0 and the magical 350, which makes no sense. Alright, there we go. So I'm pretty sure that's it. The only thing that's missing is the intoxication. I guess maybe we'll implement that later. I feel like it's not a critical game feature. You know, we'll get to it eventually. What time is it here? All right, so we got 4 minutes left of the stream. Now, technically, I guess we're not really. Or wait, did I make a mistake somewhere? Yeah. So this needs to be cast. The intoxication mechanic is important. I mean, maybe. I'm not really seeing how it contributes to the gameplay, but what do I know? Can we have a wide variety of substances? That's such a weird, like, I want to play this ant game so I can get high. Like, it's such a random... it's such a random thing to want in an ant game. Alright, so now we can... I guess everything... Or wait, actually, I forgot. I have to make the leaves edible. I forgot about that. So we'll just do that here. Yeah, like, I'm trying to remember why I added the drug mechanic. I don't remember completely. Like, I probably just thought it was funny. I don't know. But anyway, alright, so we ate all the leaves. So, I guess it works. We can't really tell, but, we should see that the hunger changes, but it's in the code, so that would... I'm pretty sure it works anyway. I made a game about ants getting high. Instantly demonetized. Alright, so considering that we have 2 minutes left, I think this is a pretty good place to end the stream here. Let me just commit my changes to the repository. Where's my terminal? I guess it just... Oh, there it is. Can't see it because my microphone is like right in front of my face. I guess we also have to commit all of the changes that we made to the math library. And I guess all those... We made a lot of changes, apparently. Hold on. Okay, and... Alright, so let's just commit this here. Fixed non-SIMD... What's that called again? The transpose function. Alright, now I don't even remember. We made too many changes. This is not a good way to use source control, but am I gonna commit the war crime of just writing many changes? Maybe I will. There we go. It's been committed. Alright, and we will commit all of these changes as well. Alright, so if we summarize what we've done here, what have we done? We basically added the ability to carry items. Now it's important to realize that this is not specific to leaves. Quite a major mechanic of the game is just picking up and moving random items. It's not just leaves, there's also like furniture and all of that. I don't even know if we'll get to that point, but we're gonna find out, I guess. I've heard that commit messages should be why you made something instead of what you did. Yeah, probably. I mean, realistically, no one reads my commit messages anyway, except for me. So, they should technically be present tense. I guess. So what's the right way to phrase it? Adds, leaves? I feel like I don't like that, but, you know. Present tense? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Everyone get out to the campfire. Alright, the development convection has been ripped in half. Of course, that makes sense. Alright guys, yeah, so this is kind of an inside look at what programming looks like behind the scenes. I'm sure this was a very boring stream, but this is kind of the reality of programming. It's not that exciting a lot of times, and this is one of the reasons why making videos is so difficult, is because most of my work looks like this. But it's actually way more infuriating when you're working on simulations, because you're trying to debug like these really difficult to debug problems, and they're also not like deterministic necessarily. This is actually fairly relaxing programming when it comes to you know, fixing bugs and stuff like that. But yeah. In any case, I hope you guys enjoyed the live stream. We are going to be back at this tomorrow. I think it's going to start at 8 a.m. EST. I don't know if I made a mistake making it that early. I think it's fine. I usually wake up way before that, but you never know, I guess. Deterministic. Well, that's the thing. You could have the physics be deterministic, but that doesn't help if you can't exactly replicate the circumstances that led to the bug. So yeah, it being non-deterministic is not the right way of putting it. Let's say replicating it is difficult. Let's put it that way. Unit testing. Well, it is unit tested, and that does help to some degree, but what if you find an issue that you don't have a unit test for? All of a sudden, you know, or what if you're like, what if like in my situation, you're working on Engine Simulator and you start hearing these weird audio artifacts, which are not necessarily like, an audio artifact is not an objective phenomenon. It's subjective to some degree. So you can't write a unit test like, oh, are there artifacts in this? It's just not possible. So you'd either have to figure out a way of quantifying that, or you have to find a systematic way of studying that data. Anyway, it's just complicated, but I get what you mean. Unit testing does help with situations like that. All right, in any case, hope you guys enjoyed the stream. I will see you all tomorrow, and thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Alright, and all my viewers on YouTube, hopefully you guys enjoy the live stream, and I will also see you guys next time.